The castle location makes the trailer seem like a fairy tale. Using this as a starting image creates a mood of enchantment and magic. The audience's first perception is that the protagonist is leading a fairy tale life, creating a false sense of security. It gives a light-hearted feel to the trailer, which is later contrasted to the uneasy images of the girl following an unknown woman. The arch is an example of ancient medieval architecture. It denotes a different period of time and the fact that it reflects a mystical world hidden in the real world. The arch acts as the beginning point of the girl's journey. Fantasy and reality collide with the arch as a physical barrier. The forest scene acts as an obstacle. The wild trees act as a barrier stopping her from catching up to the woman. The fantasy world is seen as faded over time, ancient and old. It is very open-spaced and minimal in detail, reflecting a simplistic nature of fantasy world, i.e. a more feral land. A fairy is often a convention of fantasy films. The dominant impression we get of her is a mystical, angelic being. The dominant impression of the girl is that she is the picture of innocence, a curious, inquisitive child, but also a lonely one. She seems to be ordinary, which is a typical convention of fantasy films, where the protagonist transforms into an extraordinary hero. The dominant impression of the Queen Fairy is an evil entity who tries to lure people into her world, using her minions and her power. The enchantress wears a feminine white dress to entrap and draw the girl in, creating a false sense of security and of a saintly being. In fantasy world, her appearance becomes darker, revealing a darker, more untamed nature. The girl Lily is a normal child wearing traditional clothing associated with her youth and age. The Queen Fairy is dressed in complete black and emphasises her darkness and evil nature. The lighting reflects the fantasy genre. The intensity of the golden light shows the mystical nature of the archway. The glowing is obvious but not overwhelming. The lighting generally travels out, spanning across, showing limitless potential and power. The majority of the shot in the archway scene is taken up by the arch to reflect its pivotal significance and to show the object causes the adventure to begin. Other objects in the shot indicate the period of time. The greenery possibly shows neglect. The fairy has a very flowing, gentle, enticing movement and is very purposeful in fantasy world. The character is very stripped back with no adornments, making her appear effortless and mysterious. Her confidence suggests that the situation is not new to her. She does not find the events of vanishing through the archway extraordinary. She reflects her excitement and curious nature and moves quickly to show her certainty and purposeful nature. The Queen Fairy is very self-assured and confident of her power, and this shows in her evil smile to show that it is not a new situation and her confidence is shown by her power. The shots are often establishing shots to incorporate new settings to show the transition between the two worlds and the character relationships. Close-ups of the girl are designed to reflect her changing expressions as her experience develops. The special effects reflect the magic, and the portal effect shows the powerful nature and difference in the real world. It doesn't belong naturally there. For the main part of our trailer, i.e. from when the fairy vanishes, we have chosen a track called Unpromised. The music sets the entrance of the fantasy world as eerie and haunting. This relates to the title cards, everything is not as it appears, and creates a growing sense of warning and inevitable journey. The beginning of a trailer's track is unwounded, simple but doesn't detract from the voiceover.
Presentation of characters. In fantasy films, the protagonists are usually children, generally girls, because they are put across to appear vulnerable and weak, and also so there is innocence in the film. In our film, we have chosen to have a little girl who is represented as weak and vulnerable as she is an orphan. Therefore, in the real world, she does not have any family, and so that when the fairies would take her, she would not be missed as she has no family. To be in the fantasy world, it is an opportunity for her to be a part of a family, even though they are evil. They are the closest thing she would ever have had to being in a family. Lily, our main character, has sandy blonde hair, which is also often a convention of fantasy films because it shows vulnerability and innocence. The evil queen is a stereotypical evil character, as many fantasy films have. She's the antagonist. She's the one that makes the characters' lives very difficult. She is cold-hearted and very self-centered. She's also very confident in her ability to try and get the children to come over to the fantasy world. She has no care or respect for the others and relies on the Enchantress, who is her main minion, or the most important character for her. She relies on her to lure the children into this world. She is very cold-hearted and wears all black to show her evilness, and she does not care about the children or their lives or the people that may care about them in the real world. The Enchantress is essentially a good character who has not lost all of her humanity. She is the character who lures the children into the fantasy world as set a task by the Queen Fairy. She lures the children in by looking innocent in a white dress, which shows her purity and innocence. Once she crosses over into the fantasy world, she supports a black dress, which shows her evilness. Although she is not completely evil, she still retains some of her humanity that the Queen has not yet taken away. The Minions 2 and 3 are minor characters in the trailer. They do not feature a lot in it. They are just a brief appearance to show that the Queen has other minions. Minion 2 and Minion 3 don't have much depth. What you see is what you get with them. They have no personality and they are completely evil. Whereas with the Enchantress, she still retains some human qualities, whereas with the minions, they have none. They are purely evil. For the special effects for our trailer, we wanted to use an effect that showed the difference between the real world and the fantasy world. We used a sort of goldy, orangey blur sort of colour to show the fantasy world, so it looks mystical and magical, which is a Matrox effect. We also used in the real world to show the Enchantress that she is a fairy and that she is magical and mystical. We used a shine that follows her throughout the trailer, which shows that she is indeed not part of the real world and is a fairy. For the archway, we used a Matrox flash, which is blue to show the disappearance of the Enchantress when she goes through it. For the Queen Fairy, to show her evilness, we made her slightly blue and white to make her appear even more evil, because we felt that without it she just looked too ordinary.
We used a male voiceover in our trailer because we did not want to restrict gender roles. We wanted to appeal to both genders. The voiceover is very expressive to highlight the idea that he is telling a story. The voice is middle-aged to suggest that he is wise and knowledgeable, and reflects an intelligent, wise person. He seems to know all the events that will take place. It sets the story and updates us of the backgrounds of the people in the trailer. It lets the audience know that it's a fantasy world immediately with Once Upon a Time. So it sets the story to be a fairy tale, taking viewers on an adventure.
Once upon a time, a young girl seeking solace from her lonely existence.
We used the Queen voiceover to show that she is effectively the one in control of the trailer. She effectively controls the entire fantasy world as she is the ruler. It's all up to her and it's on her say-so. And she is the all-knowledgeable figure.
I am the Fairy Queen. And if you wish to stay here forever, you can.
We used a calligraphy font in our titles for our trailer. This you'd associate with reading books and fairy tale-like books. Calligraphy is an art form and links to a more ancient medieval world. We chose gold writing as our colour to link into the theme of gold and light being used to reflect a mystical fantasy element. The final title is in a bright glowing font, which emphasises the title, hoping for people to remember it. It's very bare against a black background. This can mirror the good versus evil conflict, i.e. the girl surrounded by darkness but still able to be. The titles supply key information such as production companies and examples of successful films to make the film worth seeing. The best-selling novel by is a title card to show that the fantasy elements are traditionally made with a motif of books, whether that be literally a book in the trailer or a film being made from a book. The catchline piques people's curiosity and causes people to anticipate and imagine the world.